6 months ago, she had a joint bank account, a 5-year plan, and a mortgage conversation that never got to happen. Now she has a laptop, a part-time freelance contract, and $1,100 to her name. Girl, this is not a sad story. This is the beginning of one of the most powerful financial arcs a woman can walk through. Because here is the truth nobody tells you before it happens. A setback does not erase your financial intelligence. It just exposes what your money identity was actually built on. And for a lot of women, that identity was borrowed. Borrowed from a partner's income, a job title, a family safety net, a version of stability that looked permanent until it wasn't. We're going to talk about what actually happens to a woman's net worth after divorce, after layoffs, after a business collapse, after a health crisis drains a savings account down to nothing. And more importantly, we're going to talk about the recovery map, the specific, sequential, almost boringly practical steps that take a woman from financial free fallback to financial power. Not eventually, not someday. On a timeline you can actually track. Let's clock something first. Research from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances has consistently shown that women experience a sharper and more prolonged drop in household wealth after divorce than men do, often losing a significant share of their standard of living in the years immediately following. Separately, studies on job loss recovery show it typically takes years, not months, to rebuild income to pre-setback levels, and even longer to rebuild savings. This is not a personal failure. This is a documented pattern, which means the recovery from it can also be documented, mapped, and repeated. So, let's build the map. Stage 1. The financial autopsy. Before you can rebuild net worth, you have to know exactly what's left. Not what you assume is left. Not the number you're too afraid to look at. The actual number. This is the part almost every woman avoids, because looking at the wreckage feels like reliving it. There's a very real psychological reason for this. Financial trauma activates the same avoidance response as any other trauma. Your brain would rather not know than know and feel powerless. But powerlessness lives in the not knowing. Clarity, even ugly clarity, is where power starts. So imagine her again. Laptop open, coffee gone cold. She's not making a budget yet. She's doing something more foundational. She's writing down every account, every debt, every asset, every subscription she forgot she was still paying for. Some women call this a money audit. I call it a financial autopsy because you're examining what died so you understand what actually happened before you try to build something new on top of it. This step alone changes women. Not because the number is good. Sometimes it's genuinely rough. But because for the first time in months, she's not guessing anymore. She knows. And knowing is the first act of financial power after chaos. Stage 2. The survival floor. Here's where a lot of financial advice gets it wrong. Traditional money guidance tells you to immediately start investing, immediately build an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, immediately optimize. That advice was written for stability, not for crisis recovery. It's not designed for a woman whose income just got cut in half or vanished completely. What she needs first is not a full emergency fund. She needs a survival floor. The bare minimum monthly number that keeps rent paid, keeps the lights on, keeps food in the fridge. Nothing else. No investing. No debt payoff acceleration. No optimizing her credit score. Just the floor. This is where soft life philosophy actually gets misunderstood the most. A lot of women think soft life means comfort at all costs, even during a financial rebuild. But real softness, real self-respect, comes from safety first. You cannot pour a beautiful life into a container that has a hole in the bottom. The floor is what stops the hole. And here's the part that surprises people. Building the survival floor is often faster than women expect because it's not about earning more immediately. It's about ruthless, temporary simplification. Not permanent deprivation. Temporary. There is a difference between a woman who is broke and ashamed of it, and a woman who is in a defined, time-limited stripped-down season on her way somewhere specific. One is identity. The other is strategy. Stage 3. The income reconstruction. Once the floor is stable, this is where the map shifts from defense to offense. A lot of women coming out of a setback, especially divorce or job loss, default to trying to recreate their old income exactly as it was. Same industry, same role, same structure. But a setback is actually one of the only times in life where you're forced to ask a question most women never get space to ask. Is this the income structure I actually want? Or is it just the one I had? This is where the modern woman's advantage comes in. The rise of freelance platforms, remote contract work, digital products, coaching, content creation, and service-based side income has created something that didn't exist for previous generations of women rebuilding after a setback. Multiple income streams that don't require permission from a single employer or a single household. Picture a different woman now. 42, recently widowed, sitting at her kitchen table in Phoenix, opening a spreadsheet for the first time in her life. She spent 18 years managing a household budget, but never once had her name on a business. Within a year, she's turned a skill she used for free for years, organizing other people's homes, into a paid consulting service. Not because she suddenly became a different person, because the setback forced her to finally charge for something she had been giving away. This is a pattern worth naming. A shocking number of women rebuilding after a setback discover income potential they didn't know they had, simply because the old identity that was keeping them small got removed along with everything else. Here's a practical truth for this stage. Diversify slowly, not simultaneously. One new income stream stabilized before adding a second. Women in recovery mode often try to build 5 revenue streams at once out of fear and end up mastering none of them. The map says sequence, not simultaneity. If you're finding value in understanding the psychology behind how women rebuild wealth after everything falls apart, subscribe. This is exactly the kind of financial conversation we go deeper into here. Stage 4. The debt and credit repair phase. Now we get into the part that feels the least glamorous and matters the most. Debt. A lot of setbacks come bundled with debt. Divorce debt split unevenly. Medical debt from a health crisis. Credit card debt used to survive a layoff. This debt is not a character flaw. It's evidence that you kept yourself alive during a period when the ground disappeared. But it does need a strategy, because unmanaged debt quietly taxes every future dollar you try to build wealth with. The recovery map uses something simple. List every debt, its interest rate, and its minimum payment. Then choose one method and commit. Either the avalanche method, paying off the highest interest rate first to save the most money mathematically, or the snowball method, paying off the smallest balance first for the psychological win. Financially, avalanche wins. Emotionally, after a major life setback, a lot of women need the snowball first, because momentum and proof of progress matter more than optimization when your confidence has taken a hit. This is financial psychology that most finance content ignores. The correct, mathematical answer is not always the correct human answer. A woman who just survived a divorce or a bankruptcy needs small, visible wins to rebuild trust in her own decision-making. Give her that first, even if it costs a little extra in interest. The confidence is worth more than the math, at least in the beginning. Credit repair runs alongside this. Checking your credit report for errors, which happen more often than people realize. Keeping utilization low. Never closing old accounts just because they feel like a reminder of the old life, since account age matters for your score. This is quiet, unglamorous background work. But 18 months into the recovery map, this is often the stage that determines whether a woman can get approved for an apartment, a car, or eventually a mortgage on her own name, in her own strength. Stage 5. The rebuild of the emergency fund. Once the survival floor has held steady for a few months and debt has a plan attached to it, this is where the real emergency fund gets built. Not the bare minimum floor from stage 2. The full 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account, untouched. This stage is where a lot of women describe feeling the shift for the first time. Not because the number is huge yet. Because for the first time since the setback, there's a buffer. A woman with a buffer makes different decisions than a woman without one. She doesn't say yes to a bad job offer out of desperation. She doesn't stay in a bad living situation because she can't afford to leave. The emergency fund isn't just money. It's the physical form of choice. There's a quiet cultural shift happening around this too. A lot of financially confident women online talk about being financially attractive, not in a materialistic sense, but in the sense that stability itself becomes a magnetic trait. both in how they carry themselves and in the opportunities that come their way. A woman with a fully funded emergency fund negotiates differently. She walks into rooms differently. That's not superstition. That's the nervous system responding to actual safety. Stage 6. The investing reentry. This is the stage most women rush, and it's the one that actually determines long-term net worth the most. Once the floor is solid, the debt has a plan, and the emergency fund exists, this is when investing resumes or begins. Retirement accounts. A Roth IRA if eligible. Employer-matched contributions if there's a new job with a 401k. Low-cost index funds for anyone starting from scratch. Here's the financial truth that deserves more attention than it gets. Time in the market after a setback matters more than the amount you start with. A woman investing $200 a month starting at 33 consistently historically ends up with more wealth than a woman who waits until she has a large lump sum at 40 to start. The recovery map isn't about waiting until you feel fully recovered to invest again. It's about investing small and steady while the rest of the rebuild continues in parallel. This is also where soft life and wealth building actually merge, instead of competing. A woman can have her quiet luxury candle collection and her automated monthly investment contribution. She can enjoy a nice dinner out and still have money moving into an index fund in the background every single month without her having to think about it. Financial intelligence isn't about deprivation. It's about automation that runs quietly underneath a beautiful life. The emotional layer nobody maps. Underneath every stage of this recovery, there's an emotional current that financial advice rarely addresses honestly. There's a specific kind of grief that comes with rebuilding net worth after a setback. It's not just grief for the money. It's grief for the version of the future that got canceled. The house that was supposed to be paid off together. The retirement that was supposed to be a joint account. The business that was supposed to still exist. A lot of women feel guilty for grieving money, as if caring about finances after losing a relationship or a job makes them shallow. It doesn't. Money is never just money. It's safety, identity, freedom, and future options, all compressed into a number. Grieving the loss of financial plans is not materialistic. It's honest. And there's another emotional trap worth naming directly. Some women, after a setback, swing into what almost looks like financial self-punishment. Extreme restriction, refusing any joy spending at all, treating every dollar spent on themselves as reckless. This isn't discipline. It's fear wearing a budgeting spreadsheet as a costume. The recovery map isn't about punishing yourself back into stability. It's about strategic, intelligent rebuilding that still allows room to live. On the other end, there's the dopamine spending trap. The late-night online cart filled with things that promise to fix a feeling no purchase can actually reach. This isn't a moral failure either. It's a nervous system trying to self-soothe through the one channel that offers instant relief. The way through isn't shame. It's noticing the trigger, usually loneliness, exhaustion, or comparison from social media, and building one small, low-cost ritual that offers the same comfort without the financial damage. A bath. A show. A phone call with a friend who actually understands what you're rebuilding. The timeline truth. If there's one thing this recovery map insists on, it's this. Stop measuring your progress against a timeline that was never yours to begin with. Social media makes financial recovery look instant. A woman posts her paid-off debt with confetti graphics 18 months after her divorce, and it looks effortless from the outside. What doesn't get posted is the 11 months before that where she was surviving on a spreadsheet held together by sheer will. Real recovery, based on actual financial data, tends to unfold over 2 to 5 years depending on the severity of the setback, the income rebuild speed, and the debt load involved. That's not a discouraging number. That's a freeing one, because it means you're not behind. You're exactly on the timeline that recovery actually takes, even if it doesn't match a highlight reel online. The closing truth. Here's what nobody tells a woman standing in the wreckage of a life she didn't choose to lose. The version of her that rebuilds is not the same version that existed before the setback. She's not going back to who she was. She's becoming someone new, someone who knows exactly what she's made of, because she watched herself survive something and then quietly, methodically, build a financial floor underneath her own 2 feet. That floor becomes a foundation. That foundation becomes a life. And the woman standing on it one day, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, looking at a net worth number that finally reflects her strength instead of her survival, she won't just have rebuilt her finances. She'll have rebuilt her belief that she was always capable of holding herself up. That was never lost. It was just waiting for her to prove it to herself, one small, unglamorous, deeply intelligent decision at a time.